Moved by Bill, seconded by Peter, to approve the minutes as prepared. Is there any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Okay. Minutes are unanimously adopted. Thank you, Therese. Okay, the next item on the agenda is a review of the draft fiscal year 2025-2026 operating budget. We have
I think we skipped the comments.
we have one slip of Dwayne that wants to,
Item number 9.
oh, I just checked that off. Thank you, Kate. I just moved right by it. I'm so eager to get to the budget. Start plowing that turf. Okay, comments and requests. General manager's comments. Jake, that's you.
Just a couple things. I'll keep it relatively short. On the grants front, our grant pursuits, a couple of things, couple of irons in the fire there. We actually met with ICE's office a few weeks ago
Yes.
and pitched a couple of projects to them. They do what they call their community funding projects or community funded projects. So through the feds each year, through various agencies, departments at the federal government level. So we actually put in an application from them, got a few support letters from some of our local agencies, North County Fire and that. They are related to wildfire resiliency, those type of projects. It's the second heli hydrant and then genset that we're looking to add at one of our pump stations and then some pipeline replacement that would help with fire flow, additional hydrants, things like
The
that.
total value of our request.
It's about 3 million, a
Okay.
little under 3 million, which we got some guidance from them on kind of limits.
Boundaries.
Yeah, some boundaries there. So, but they really liked our projects, and again, we submitted those just late last week along with some support letters. So hoping for the best on that one.
What's the timing generally? Is this something that has to be in an appropriation
Yes,
bill?
yes.
So
So we'll start as it moves through over the
got a
next.
long process ahead of it.
Yeah, so we'll know by whenever that October,
Yep,
as
yep,
the
yep.
process goes forward.
Right.
Not terribly long actually in the grant world. But then even once it's appropriated, then
It has to go through some more gymnastics.
it
Right.
does. It takes a while to get there, but these are things we want to do, and obviously some additional funding would go a long way to get those things done. The other thing, and I had mentioned this a few months ago, and obviously, unfortunately, we had the fires up in LA. But typically, what happens when there's a emergency declaration that's from the federal government, obviously FEMA gets involved, and funding kind of flows from there. And so there was an emergency declaration, and when those funds get allocated, a portion of those funds go towards future hazard mitigation grants, a certain percentage of any kind of disaster like that. So we had anticipated that at some point we would see a notice of funding opportunity come out from FEMA. Usually comes through Cal OES, right? They come through the state agency. And so that came out last week as well. A notice of intent is due at the end of May. So you got to submit your projects basically by May, and then there's a formal application process, but there will likely be quite a bit of funding available. And again, these are targeted at hazard mitigation. So things like emergency generators and, anything actually you can tie to, prevention of future disasters, would qualify. So we're looking at that as well. Obviously, we've got some projects there that might fit that bill. Also, a little bit of good news on the finance side. It's not huge, but it's something. And I know, we had talked a lot last year. I know there was, we had to up the budget on the acquisitions for the County Water Authority, the 2 turnouts and things like that. And, there was some costs associated with some of the activities we did. Well, we're going to get some of that back. So yeah, the study that MWD wanted to do turns out it's really not going to be necessary. So we'd given them a deposit to kind of go through this a study of those connections. So we're probably going to get about somewhere in the $75,000 about $75,000 back from that study. That one takes a few months. The other one was we had on deposit at LAFCO. We had indemnified everybody as far as the lawsuits and things. So we had deposit at LAFCO for legal defense, and obviously handling that relatively quickly. We did not incur a lot of expenses, or LAFCO did not incur a lot of legal expenses on our behalf. And so we're going to get it's about $25,000. We're going to get back on that too. So those things are starting to kind of unwind themselves and to the good side, to our good side. So wanted to let you know that. The other thing, and if you already you already heard this, but the County Water Authority is proposing to shut down the Pipeline 4, which is the treated water pipeline, for an emergency repair. It's actually right here. It's just what they say, just south of Doolin. So that's where the Rancho Montserrat is, and they have their pipelines go. You've seen the relining project. That's on the raw water line, but they have an emergency repair that needs to occur on the treated water line. Now that feeds our Connection 8 and Connection 9. Connection 8 is one of our workhorses. So not really excited about doing that in June. It's a 20-day shutdown, a proposed 20-day shutdown, which is pretty extended. So we're starting to make preparations now. The good thing is, by us having those pump stations in the south end, because right now we would be mobilizing temporary pump stations, right? The diesel powered, which likely wouldn't have been, hard to get them in enough size to actually meet demands down there. So I know in the past we used to put billboards out that said, reduce water demand. And those weren't June shutdowns. Those were November or December kind of shutdowns. So again, understand, they've got a pipeline that they feel is at risk, and so they're planning the shutdown. The pump stations, obviously, that's a good thing. So really, the one thing that operations is really preparing for is just being able to get, move enough water from the first aqueduct over into, Palo Mesa, Morro zone, and then obviously can transfer across to the south part of our area. The one thing that, and this was a project that we already had planned, but we are accelerating, is one of the FPUD connection, the interconnects with FPUD. Fallbrook also has a connection to the first aqueduct that has good capacity. Obviously, they've got their storage in Red Mountain. We're also filling Morro. We've actually already started that process. So everybody's beefing up their storage and kind of getting ready. But that interconnect actually acts as a backup to Connection 8. And so that's the one we're going to we're really moving on. And so what you're going to see from that is likely a agreement. And so I drafted an interconnection agreement between us and Fallbrook. It's actually an attachment to the agreement that the board approved in March. And so that'll kind of set the grounds for that interconnect, and it will have the ability to go both ways. They can feed us by gravity, but we're gonna provide enough facilities where, if the need arises, they could bring a pump out and some temporary piping and actually move it the other way, should they have an emergency on that side. So, but more often than not, it'd probably be them to us at this particular location. So that's the main thing we're doing. There's also some other activities that Ops is doing to kind of, belt and suspenders and then suspenders on a second set of suspenders, just to make sure, obviously, that we can bring in enough supply, in particular to that area, to but I think but obviously it's going to be a lot less expensive than it was back when we had to do the temporary pump stations. Those typically ran, from what I heard, $300,000 to $500,000 by the time filling diesel up every day and running that kind of water through those pump stations. The station's already there, so it's kind of normal operation.
What tank or tanks are primarily affected by this? Any?
Well, it's service area wide. Like I said, Connection 8 is our workhorse, so it's quite often the one we have the most flow coming out of. It feeds kind of directly into those zones, though: Palo Mesa, Morro, and then that, Morrow feeds the south end. So those are the ones that are most impacted, but really again, with those pump stations in place, it's really just about being able to move the supply over in that
Okay.
direction.
All right.
But yeah, so anyways, more to come on that. We're still waiting for some details from the County Water Authority. They were getting a couple of bids on the work that was going to come with a very detailed schedule. Obviously, everybody, this isn't just us. This affects Oceanside, Valley Center, Vallecito's, Fallbrook Rainbow. It's a lot more, there's concern out there. Rancho feeds off Pipeline 4 as well. So everybody's kind of alert level is high on this thing, and we're kind of waiting to get more details on exact timing and those kind of things. But we're already working to kind of mitigate the issue.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that it?
That's it.
Thank you. Any questions for Jake? Okay, we'll go on to finance manager comments, Constantine.
No additional comments.
Okay,
The-
yeah, you're gonna have a lot to talk
later.
about anyway,
Yes.
right? Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Coming up.
And finally, committee member comments. Bill, you got anything? Hayden?
Nope.
Pete? Okay. Now we will go to item 10. Review of draft fiscal year 2025-26 operating budget.
And I need liquor for the slide.
Constantine, this is you. Or
Yeah.
you gonna lead it off?
I was gonna start. First by just a lot of appreciation for Constantine and his team. They've been he's just coming up to speed on the district. Just starting a month or so ago, and jumped right in on this, but preparation of the draft budget. So really appreciate him and his team have put in a lot of hours. Crunching all the numbers and getting through all the departments and all these things that we're gonna have to deal with in the next year, both on the water and the wastewater side. So a lot of appreciation there. I will say this, that what you'll see today is really a lot of what we expected. And I think it's a good thing. We knew that there would be a Met. We already know what Met's rates are going to be for 2026, and so that provides us a lot of foresight into what we need to do. That obviously that's our biggest cost is the water purchase. But really looking at kind of what would have been, everybody's getting into their budgets right now, and so we got a little look at what's happening down south and at the water authority level, and it's I don't know the word for it, but the difference in the treated water rate, which again, that's our biggest cost. It would have been an additional, and they're just a draft budget too, so maybe they started high and they're going to come down, and won't be quite this large, but just in the variable cost, it would have been an additional $8 million to us, additional $8 million to Rainbow in water purchase costs. So that's the difference between 2025 and 2026. Not looking back. This is just, an additional $8 million. What that equates to is a 16% rate increase for Rainbow. That's what we would have been looking at before we took into account anything else. Increase in fixed cost, energy, labor, all that aside, 16% rate increase. And so obviously I feel very fortunate to be bringing this to you today, not looking at anything near those kind of increases and really credit to our staff too, who've done a great job at maintaining their budgets, right? That you have, all of our management team here is hyper focused on budgeting correctly and then adhering to those budgets over the course of the year. And I think it shows again in what you'll see today, where we've got, very frugal, very frugal, really only increases where a lot of it's really out of our control, right? The energy and the chemicals and things like that are kind of outside the district control. So I'll let Constantine get into the details. He's got a lot of numbers for you, but just kind of wanted to set the stage there that at least personally, I feel very fortunate that, our budget could have been much more painful had we not the board
Yes.
and staff and not had the foresight to kind of get us in a better position. So
Constantine, before you start, I just want to say that I have the opportunity to go through your presentation. It was provided to us. And for a guy that's been here a very short time, this is a really outstanding presentation, and I appreciate all that you had to do to get up to speed on a brand new organization for you with all of our little idiosyncrasies and so forth. Hell of an effort. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead.
I appreciate that. Thank you. I wanted to start by reviewing our current financial position before we jumping into reviewing next fiscal year budget. So we'll look at where we are at right now. And we have, as of February, and those are the actuals that I use in order to build the projections for this current fiscal year 25 and to build the budget for 26. We are at almost 10,000 acre feet of water sales, and it was budgeted total 10,000 for this current fiscal year. So we're already almost meeting our budget numbers as of February. So it's a little bit of good news. So we are also rebuilding our cash reserves. We surpassed the minimum required level. We're at 14.4 million in cash reserves currently. And what really helped us is, as you can see, it was a trajectory downward as we were staying with San Diego County, with San Diego Water District. And their charges were just way too expensive, and we were not collecting as much from water rates that we're charging our customers. So that depleted our reserves, and we just started to rebuild them.
Constantine,
Mhm.
would I be correct in suggesting that our future looks good? Because this data is only as of the end of February. We still have March, April, May, and
That's right.
June.
Yes.
And I am guessing that the reason why we have that nice uptick in the white accumulation of reserves is because we've had substantial water sales during that period. And we're going to obviously exceed the 10,000 pretty substantially if we've got a third of the year left to record, 4 months left to record. So would it be fair to say that we would expect that our reserves to continue to rise?
Our reserves will continue to rise, and you're jumping ahead. I have a slide where we'll project the reserves
Sorry.
for the next 5 years. No problem. But there-
He does
I will
that all the time.
yeah, I'll say this. There's one caveat on there. If you remember too, we refunded ourselves from the initial $3.2 million payment that we made to the County Water Authority.
and
So that came in January.
that's where you see the jump from December to January from 8 to 12 million is those 3 million that we received from the loan. So they didn't come from water sales revenues. But from January to February movement, that's where you can see the revenue that we're generating, and not money from borrowing. And this is what we want to see. We want to see real sales revenue and not the increase in cash because we're borrowing. So let's dive in our budget workshop. This is our budget timeline. Just want to first put our schedule. On May 6th, we'll have joint budget workshop where we'll review everything in detail all together. Today is just to kick off the budget discussion. And our plan is to adopt and review on May 27 the budget, May 27 Board of Directors meeting. All right. First, we're gonna review Water Fund 01. We'll start with expenditures and then look at our revenues, and then we'll look at the net. So first, we'll talk about the things that we have to pay for. And I put a slide together of major cost drivers for us. As we all know, on January 2026, Metropolitan will increase rates by 9.5% for water that we're buying from them. They're also increasing their fixed charges by 11.5%. And then we have CalPERS unfunded liability is for our pension because of stock market not performing very well and it's volatile. So our unfunded portion of liability will increase by about 20%. And I have a slide on that. It increased about 23% this year also compared to previous year. Labor cost will increase about 5.6% for us, and primarily it's driven by 7% increase in health insurance and health benefits. So as you can see, mostly those increases are something that's out of our hands. Those are set by either regulations or inflation. We have electricity cost increase from San Diego Gas and Electric, and some compliance costs like electric vehicle purchases request by the California state. So we have to build infrastructure for that. We have new state regulations on backflow prevention and some regulatory permits as well. Some new ones that will be coming out. Okay, next slide.
And these compliance costs right now are unknown.
We know them and we build them into the budget.
Okay,
Mhm.
you're estimating.
Yes.
To some degree,
Yeah.
some of them
Yeah.
will, yeah.
I mean, the EV, there's a move to be able to delay the EV purchases because of the equipment not being available.
Here, next 3 slides will show our past, present, and future. And that's the way I like to see the things to have a full picture of where we are. And this is when we were staying with San Diego Water. And because of their very high fixed charges during the dry months when we were buying very little water from them, actually costs went up all the way up to $3,375 per acre feet, like in March. And you can see the orange is the rate that we are paying, which including the fixed and variable cost. So, and this is coming from actuals of fiscal year 24. We paid $22 million for water that we purchased, and we purchased 11,264 acre feet. This is where we are right now. Yes, thank you. In yellow, you can see it. This is when we separated from San Diego Water District, and where we started purchasing water from Eastern. Eastern has way lower fixed cost charges, and even though March is our this is when we're buying water less in that month, our rate doesn't increase that much. So 12-month average, the water is $1,621, which is a 26% decrease compared to prior year. It is projected that for current fiscal year, we will spend 21.9, almost 22 million on the water purchases, and we will buy about 13,290 acre feet.
Constantine, if I'm looking at a prior chart,
Yes.
it is stunning as I read this to see that in March of 2024, we were paying, looks like $3,300 per acre foot to the Water Authority. And this year in March, we're going to be paying $1,700. We've cut our unit cost in half, haven't we?
Well, I mean, you got over the course of a entire year, obviously it balances,
Right.
but I think what he's showing is there was these very large fixed charges,
Yes.
Mhm.
infrastructure access charge and all these things that were very specific to water authority charges. Those actually those drop off. So yeah, we're not buying very much water. There was still a
those huge
very,
amounts.
very large water bill coming through the door.
And this is fulfillment basically of a promise to ratepayers to keep our water costs down by making the transition
That's right.
from San Diego Water Authority to,
Correct. And some, you know, and we've talked about this before where.
this is huge. I mean,
Yeah,
this is huge.
It absolutely is. And we've talked about this before where, you know, and a lot of it was the fixed cost, you know, Eastern charges us $12 an acre foot for administrative. We still do have the Met fixed rates. That's the capacity and the readiness to serve. So those ones still remain. There is fixed costs. And as you see, you know, in 26, they plan on raising those. So that's, you know, not unique to the Water Authority. The thing we've done, you know, obviously we had costs to get out, right? And so we had our both the infrastructure to build the infrastructure and then the exit fee. Obviously, those were pretty large costs. Now we finance those over a 10-year period to kind of some generational equity on those things. So that does show up as a fixed cost, right? And
Mhm.
Constantine will go through that slide too. You'll see how our debt, you know, our debt increase has gone, or our debt payments have gone up. The good thing about that is, I mean, if there's a good thing about taking on debt, it's fixed, it's flat over those 10 years. So it is not subject to 10, 12, 15% rate increases. And so really what it allows you to do is keep everything very steady, right? Now your water costs are steady, and you're not getting large increases on what are now your fixed costs, right? It's so over time, it actually, you know, gains with inflation, right? Gains with inflation, becomes less impactful, but that is kind of the story behind this. But it obviously allowed us to go 18 months with no rate increase, right? From July 1, 23 all the way to Jan 1, 26 or 24 to 26. And you'll see what we're looking at this year. You know, we're not going to do anything until January 1, and it's looking very, very stable, which is exactly what we
Yeah.
said.
Yeah.
Lines that look like this are much better than lines that
Yes.
look like that. So
Yes.
I just wanted to thank you.
And-
Keep going.
This is what we're looking at for the budgeted fiscal year 26. Next one. We based on 11,000 acre feet water sales, plus we have to buy extra for account for some water loss. But it's, as you can see, the line is more straight. It's not as drastic as it's very big difference. We budgeting to buy 18.5 million in water for the fiscal year 26.
Expand on the water loss.
Yeah, I mean, historically, we've been, you know, around, well, it's been around 8%, but it's what we're seeing is it actually, the amount of loss actually doesn't change that much. So as our water sales kind of do this, that percentage kind of bounces with it. So what that tells us is it's really not loss so much in our meters and things like that. It's more, it's real loss. It's actually water we're losing, and we account for some of that. I mean, obviously we have main breaks, and so we account for that. Anytime, we're running hydrants. We actually keep track of those things because again, this is a state reporting thing that we have to report that every single year. So there's all these different categories we run into, but it has allowed us to kind of hone in on that data to go, it's actually not, a lot of it doesn't appear to be apparent loss. That's what they call it, apparent loss, where you're actually losing water through meters and things like that. It looks to be real loss. And so the percentage, you know, is in that 8, you know, high 8s and,
It's
you know, percentage
It's
range.
conservative, 10% conservative, but it's for the budget purposes.
Going back to Wausau, water meter swap out, you were chasing that delta. That was one of the primary drivers, wasn't it? You closed down on this loss, which was.
I think the hope was, that would provide some additional accuracy on those meters. I think what we've seen though is which the meters needed to be replaced. So at some point you do have to replace them regardless, or else it will start to show up. But I think what we're seeing is it really more is in the real.
8 to 10% was what it was before.
Yeah.
Sorry, Rick, can you mind going to the lectern?
And-
Otherwise-
I would like to remind the audience that in order, the rules of our committee are that we really need to have a speaker slip and for a person to speak. And Just so we can move along and
Yeah.
not have conversations
Yeah.
that just go back and forth, back and forth.
But it is a budget number.
But
I guess that's a
On
bottom.
the other hand, we do like the fact that we have ratepayers here and that they want to participate, they want to hear what's going on. But we, in the interest of time and movement, we need to adhere to the committee rules. Okay?
Thanks, Flip.
Yep.
Sorry.
Uh,
Kind of my fault.
Anyways, all right, next slide. We'll look at all the debt that all the money that we borrowed. And this is something that we need to keep in mind. Our payment of principal and interest will increase next year by 62% compared to the current year. So current year we'll pay 3.9 million, and then we will add payment of the exit fee, almost 16 million that we had to borrow in order to finance that. So for next year, we're gonna set aside 6.3 million in principal and interest payment. And like Jake mentioned, it's much better and it's something that's controllable. And as you can see, it's more of a straight line than paying huge costs with San Diego Water Authority. And then that, as we're paying it off, it will start to falling off our books, and then we will have more room, and then we'll have more.
To that end, Constantine, and Jake, I love the idea of the way we extended the payment period for some of our costs. What I would expect to see and I have seen it in other agencies that I've been involved with in a prior career, why would we not consider a bond issuance?
Mhm.
A 30-year bond, and we lump all of that debt into a 30-year bond, string it out, we get a straight line,
Yep.
you know, and the further out into the future we get, the present value of those future dollars becomes smaller and smaller and smaller. And we could also use a debt issuance, for example, to pump up our reserves a little bit, a bond issuance, and also fund perhaps in a staggered bond issuance, fund some capital projects, some replacement where we could really push the accelerator. And I'm just curious, is there any thought being given to the issuance of some long-term bonds? Because this is a
Yeah.
perfect use of it. It's a
Right.
perfect use of it.
Right. And that is, I think it is appropriate. Usually it it tracks the life of an asset. Right. And so, yeah, we're putting in pipeline, we're putting in, tanks, things like that. It is very appropriate to go over a longer period of time. And I think as you, and you'll see this on one of Constantine's last slide on that 5-year projection that we had, when we get a lot of this debt really was, the meters, which really only have a, 10-year-ish life. Also the exit fee, obviously we proved out a 10-year window of benefit, which allowed us to finance that over that period of time. So,
But our window of benefit is substantially
Yeah.
longer. I mean, it's
So I
into
think
infinity.
when we get to those, and I think it was like 27, 28, as we see these, that's the meter debt falling off. There actually is a proposal in there where you would basically, and you see it in our CIP in like year 3, you see kind of super fund a lot of the pipeline replacements and pump station rehabs and things that have been deferred for
Too long.
for too long. And I think that's exactly what we would consider. We would consider a longer term, basically where you could kind of stay within that little window there. But I think, for those kind of facilities, I think we would definitely consider a bond. I think we would definitely consider something longer term.
It's something that I will be looking into in the future. Yeah. And consolidating our debt. Here in the brackets, I also put percentages of the interest that we're paying on those.
Yeah.
So we will be able to reduce that interest with bonds issuance and consolidate instead of having multiple small.
Yeah, there was some strategy too, and I'm channeling my inner Rick Aragon here, because we had a lot of discussions about this. There was some strategy there too on just kind of where the market's at right now, and some of these give you a lot more flexibility in what you can do. So after, after a few years, it actually gives you the opportunity to refinance, pay it off early, things like that, where bonds have a much stricter, long-term bonds have a much stricter, policies on things like that. So there was a little bit of strategy there too, as far as what type of debt we wanted to take on. But again, I think if we're talking about pipeline replacements and the interest rate market looks decent when the timing is, I think
Yeah,
it'd be very
I mean, long bonds.
favorable approach.
Long bonds are well under 5% right now, and that,
Historically good.
that's a good number. That's a
Yeah.
really good number. And I was not trying to be in any way critical of the plan that's here, but just offering a suggestion moving forward that we can make the height of those bars much, much lower if we refinanced a bunch of that debt and also financed our capital program with
Yeah.
some bonds, some long bonds.
Yeah. So
That's all.
we'll be looking at timing. That's
Okay,
a great
okay,
suggestion.
okay.
Thank you.
Mhm. Right. Next slide reviews our labor cost. And as discussed in the earlier, we are planning on 5.6% increase, primarily driven by health insurance cost. Cost of living increase for us on average is 2.5%. That's been budgeted. I checked the consumer price index for San Diego as of March is 3.8%. So the cost of living that we have here is going to be on the lower end. We'll be doing 2.5%, and average merit increase 4.4%. So that's how we get to the total of 5%, 5.6%. And then the way our labor is distributed, 81% of it going to our water fund and 19% is going to wastewater fund. And that's where you see this breakdown.
And I didn't bring my glasses. And I think I heard you, and the CPI is averaging 3.8 in San Diego. Is that what you said?
Mhm.
Okay.
That's right.
It is.
San Diego and Carlsbad area.
Yep.
Mhm. Next slide showing our CalPERS UAL unfunded accrued liability for our retirees, and current fiscal year, they're charging us 23% more than in fiscal year 2024. In fiscal year 24, we did see a decrease in unfunded pension liability, and that's because they usually have a 2-year lag how they calculate your unfunded liability. And the stock market were performing very well after COVID, so that's how they were able to reduce. And right now we do see this volatility on the market, and that is why I conservatively projected that they will increase us by 20%. So
And this is the money that we pay into CalPERS on behalf of our employees so that they have pension benefits in the future. Is that what this is about?
Employee and
Mhm.
retiree.
Yeah.
Yep.
and
Yeah,
retirees.
okay.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
To cover their shortfall in an investment.
Yeah. Basically, if they don't hit 6.8%, your unfunded liability goes up.
Is that the bench?
If they hit above 6.8, then
That's the bench,
Yeah.
6.8?
yeah.
Geez, that shouldn't be hard.
Yeah. Well, so yeah, just it does this, right? Some
Yeah.
years they do, some years they don't. Yeah.
Mostly they don't.
Next, this is something that we can control is O&M expenditure, and it's about the same as last year. It is showing a decrease, and just because when I looked at what has been put in operation expense and actually tank maintenance, it should be moved into CIP work, and that is why some of the work that we do actually is capitalized, because our capitalization policy, anything that's over $10,000 and extending life of an asset for over a year, then we can capitalize that
Okay.
work and then depreciate it over the life. So that is where you see we budgeted 7.3 million for the next fiscal year. Next slide, we overseeing reviewing our water sales. and it was determined 11,000 and approved already. We reviewed it, and this is where we're diving into our revenues. So all the slides before this, we were talking about expenditures, all the things that we need to pay for, and now how we're going to pay for it. And this is with water sales. And then, as you can see, we have primarily majority of water sales coming from agricultural. It is budgeted as almost 7,000 acre feet, and residential, the second largest, 3,287 acre feet. This
FY 25 is our current year, and that's
it's our current
7387 number
Okay.
is an extrapolation for the full year, or is it where we are to date?
extrapolation. This is projection for the year
Okay,
because I need to compare apple to apples.
Yes.
Each column is the full year.
yes,
I took the actuals as of February, the ones that we just reviewed, and then I used the actuals of the prior year just to be conservative on the conservative side, because prior year was a wet year. We sold less, and I just used those numbers to project where we're gonna be at the end as of June 30th. And I think we're gonna be around 12,091, 12,500, something like that, on the revenues for water sales. Right. And this is where, so previous slide talked about the acre feet. Now we're talking dollars. For the current fiscal year, our revenues will be looking at about 52.3 million. And then here you can see the breakdown. And then for the next fiscal year, based on 11,000 acre feet sale, we'll see the revenues over here. And it is accounted for the fact that our sales are not straight line. So we're going to sell 68% of the water before December 31st in the first 2 quarters of the fiscal year. And that would be before the increase in the rates to our customers. All right. And the next slide kind of
could you
shows
go
the
back
full
to that
picture.
one, please?
Uh-huh.
So the light blue is fixed charges on water, and the orange is actual consumption, right?
Yes, it's a variable.
Okay.
Mhm.
And so level for a couple of years, then up and up. So, and you're assuming that in 26, it's going to look more like 25 rather than 24 or 23, right? That's kind of what you're assuming?
That is correct.
Okay. All
It's
right.
based on 11,000 acre feet sales
Yeah.
with increase in rates on January 1st in fixed and variable.
Okay.
With the fact that 68% of variable water will be sold in before the rate increase.
Okay. Right.
And fiscal year 25 column is higher because it's projected at about 12,000 acre feet water sales. We're projecting to sell more this year
Then next
and then next year, being conservative. Because the
plan
year
for the worst and
before,
hope for the best, right?
that's right.
Yep. Okay.
Because the year before we were under 10,000. So we have to be very careful, especially our reserves are low. If we budgeting for 11,000, but we'll come in at 10,000, we will lose over $1 million, which we cannot afford. If we sell more, that's just good news. So we try to be somewhere in the middle with this budget. Next slide. This is straight from accounting. It's very nice where you can see revenues and expenses all together, and then you can see the net. And we're showing that, so this is the revenue that we will collect, 50 million, and this is where it will go. So that's the breakdown. That's that labor that we saw it's going to be at 9 million, and then the CalPERS COL 962,000. So all the numbers that we discussed on previous slides, they will flow into this expenses over here. And then we have
I'm glad to see this because I think Hayden and I had a collective memory that I think the chart that was sent to us in the agenda showed that the expenses were 47 million. And therefore we couldn't understand why there was a zero
Zero.
there. And, right, you and I saw the same thing, didn't we?
That-
Yeah,
that was
but I
not
see
the-
that whatever that hiccup was, that was just a hiccup
yeah, it
and,
was not summing up correctly the whole
Okay.
total column. Mhm.
Yeah.
And
well,
so-
my heart
but if
breathes
you-
easier because I thought somehow you had run off with $3 million. I was getting a little nervous.
But if you combine the numbers,
Yeah.
you make a sum of it, it does add up to 50 million
Okay.
in
Yeah,
expenses.
We go to the bottom line,
Yeah.
Constantine. Your job is some of the numbers.
No. Yeah, no. And you can see that revenues equal expenses because we're not allowed to profit off
Right.
Yeah.
customers, and we're showing where every dollar will go to. So every dollar is accounted for.
Good.
Let's see. This is our proposed plan as we already discussed. So on January 1st, increase rates by 4%, which will defer by 6 months of original plan. So we're not increasing on July 1st.
Yeah, if you remember right, the 218, well, we've talked about this, had a up to 9%, and that was every July, but it did assume we would be with the water authority. So
Mhm. And primarily, the reason for this increase is Metropolitan increasing the rate that we purchasing water it's by 9.5%. So
And we're basically only going to pass half of that on to our
well, it
customers.
yeah,
that's only purchased water. So it hits us. If I remember this number right, that increase hits us, and it's about a 3.6% hit on our rates. You know, that's what it would require for us. So you can see, we've kind of held our budget within, like, you know, our operating budget within about 0.4% of that.
How do we, I don't understand exactly how the gymnastics of that works. If we are paying 9.5%.
But it's only on purchase water.
Right.
So it's only one line item on our expense sheet. So overall, that, you know, the $50 million whole pie, it hits us at about 3.5%. Like, we would have to increase rates by 3.5% just to cover the additional costs for Met. Does that make sense? Based on a 9.5% increase.
Because we have other costs such as our operating, the
Right.
14 million it takes to run this joint,
Chemicals,
some other stuff.
energy, all those
Okay,
different things.
So the 9.5% net to us and the customer is diluted by the fact that we have other expenses that are not going up.
We've
Is that
held much
Yeah,
lower,
yeah.
basically almost at zero.
almost zero? Right. Okay, I got it now. Thank you.
basically, if they wouldn't increase by this much, if they increase only 4 or 5%, we probably wouldn't even need to increase rates to our customers. So that's what it's telling us. And the reason, the logic behind it, how we come up with the 4% is the slide before this. That's how you get to the zero over here, is matching up the revenue to all the expense, everything that we have to pay for. And if we would increase by 3%, let's say, then we would have a negative revenue over here. And then we'll have to borrow more, and because we don't have money in our reserves, basically. So that is the logic behind it. And the same with the fixed rates. Fixed charges are also going up from Metropolitan. How much are they charging us? So readiness to serve charge, they increasing by 3.9%, and capacity charge increasing by 11.5%. And they're doing this increases, all increases on January 1st, 2026. So we are assuming 4% increase on the fixed charges and on the variable.
Question, could you go back to the previous chart a second,
Yes.
where it's listing the income and the expenses?
Mhm.
Now, looking at the expense categories.
Mhm.
which ones do you say are the biggest risk for being in error?
For being an error.
Yeah.
Well, water purchases, it can go up and down depending because we cannot predict the weather and the rain. So we're just really trying our best. And that could be plus minus $1 million easily. So that is the variation right there.
Yeah.
Debt service is straight up, it is what it is. And labor, CalPERS, depending on the market, but as close as it can get. This could be plus minus 200,000. O&M, the same, it is what it is. It's the budgeted numbers from our departments that came in.
Probably the biggest risk in O&M is really more on the emergencies, the main breaks and, what kind of, if you've got a year where you're, yeah, we try to do,
That's right.
we look at like a 5-year average and try to smooth those things out, but there's some risks. That's probably our biggest risk on that one. Yeah.
And then we can manage CIP spending by just holding off on some projects. Like, for example, if we have large emergencies O&M, then some of the funds out of CIP will just migrate into O&M. So that is kind of how we're going to try to manage and stay within
Or you could
the rate.
you could choose to delay going out to bid on something for 3 or 4 months, and that would generate some uncash flow.
Right.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. That is the place where we have some, at least some flexibility in what
and
what
control.
we're doing. Yeah.
Or if we'll have very wet year, a lot of emergencies, the worst case scenario, then we'll have to issue bonds or go borrow. And that is something, and then we'll do a mid-year budget review. But this is our best educated guess
Yeah.
right here.
And it's a great question. And I think the thing about, the CIP, as we talk through this, we have some flexibility in the CIP. There are, things if you have to, you can defer. The issue is it introduces more risk into that O&M in the future, right? You're actually probably costing yourself in the long run because you're,
More
yeah.
main breaks. more
Yeah.
bid
You're going out
More
dealing.
water loss
Yeah.
if we don't
Yeah.
put
So,
money into CIP.
but those are water purchases is really the big one, but there are some others.
That's what I assumed it was, but
Yeah.
just wanted to check it out.
It's good.
Thank-
Good
thank you.
question.
Thank you.
Like earthquake we had yesterday, and thank God there was nothing broken. I checked right away, so we don't have to account for.
Unexpected
Yeah,
CIP.
Yeah. That's it for our water fund.
Do we want to maybe wait here or because I think Dwayne wants to talk about water
Yeah, and Dwayne, were you ready to talk?
because we're going to move to wastewater next.
Okay.
Yes.
And a reminder that yeah, right. And a reminder that we'd like to keep this around 3 minutes, please. If possible. I know, but help us out, Dwayne. Help us
All right,
out.
fair enough. First, I'd like to thank Jake. Jake has been working, shall we say, behind the scenes on some long-term goals that are near and dear to the ag community, and I wanted to thank him for his efforts and wish him well in that continued endeavor. My comments now are, what I could say is from what he shared with us, those are more long-term, like 2026 type goals. And I can tell you from the farmers that we're working at LAFCO, our goal in getting the detachment was to get immediate relief because we were feeling pressure back in the 2021, 22, 23 time period. And for those of you that weren't involved in LAFCO, which were many, there were just predominantly farmers with pitchforks fighting against other water agencies, water districts, union labor, other interest, if you will. And if you weren't actually involved in the actual battle, you wouldn't have known how close the vote was to not going ahead with the detachment. So I've got to give a shout out to the farmers who were largely responsible, in my view, from my observation, in helping get this over the hump, because we were the countervailing voice to everyone, including Sacramento, that didn't want to see this go through. So with that, specifically, one of the things that comes up frequently when you're trying to adjust rates and balance things out is this Proposition 218. I would ask that the board read 218 if you haven't done so. I'd ask you to read the introductory comments to the legislation and the like. And in the introductory remarks, it says plain out, our goal is to provide the public with more transparency, the likelihood to try and give them more control post 13 over special districts raising rates without anybody knowing it, blah, blah, blah. Any event, but the fact of the matter is proportionality is in the eye of the beholder. And so when you want a certain goal to occur, you go, well, we can't change that because of 218. But if you actually examine the issues, and Flint, you brought up perhaps one of the most relevant observations. Tell me how water districts match up evenly when you got a water district in LA that has a community of, 5,000 square foot lot or 5,000 square foot lots and a couple of shopping centers versus a diverse district like this that has agriculture, has commercial, has larger lots, et cetera, et cetera. There's no way to develop a perfect uniformity between these districts. And what I looked at in all is the observation or the overview that I've been provided by this district, basically indicating that we're in favor of supporting agriculture. And when I look though and compare to other districts, and the most comparable, not totally comparable, is FPUD. You have, I'm using the 2-inch meter because that's what I'm familiar with, a $771 fixed charge. Okay. That means I have to spend almost $10,000 just for the privilege of buying water to try and keep my farm in business. Now, the so-called compensating factor was lower per unit costs. Your per unit costs are $491. Okay. FPUD is $437 using, when you adjust for it, and their fixed cost is $532 per month. So your rates here are disadvantaging agriculture. In addition to which, one of the goals, at least from the farmers that were active in the detachment, we were shooting for Eastern's rates. Eastern's fixed charge for a 2-inch meter is $30. Okay. And their per unit cost is $417. Why isn't that the goal and the objective for agriculture here if you want to keep and maintain agriculture? And your board member, Peter, hit the nail right on the head. You've had 30,000, used to sell 30,000 acre feet of water. Now you sell 10 or 11,000 acre feet, and 95% of that loss is in agricultural sales. That's the problem, or part of the problem, and it's part of the solution. The only way you're going to adjust and increase water sales to agriculture is you got to make it feasible for people to stay in agriculture. I asked Victor Wechter, 40-year-old farmer. I'm 40 a little over 40 years, but been farming for 40 years, but basically a seasoned farmer. Mark Lowell, Rick Carey, myself, I'm a 2nd-generation farmer. So when I'm coming to you and saying we've got a problem about keeping agriculture, it's not an exaggeration, and something needs to be done about it. So I did a little extra research, and I found out that there was a bill that was passed, a companion bill to 218, and I gave you a copy of it. And it's SB 1072, and it's called remedies. And it's remedies for when there is an option to provide a refund procedure when there's some anomalies related to 218 and the like. So and I also handed you a companion handout showing your rate study from June of 2023. And I highlighted in this insert in the page, the cost for a residential 2-inch meter, which is half the cost of an agricultural 2-inch meter, and also much lower than the PSAR rate for those of ours that were on PSAR. Now, I will tell you that I didn't know, honestly, that Rainbow is going to be delayed a year to be able to pass along the water savings and the like. I didn't know that, and I don't think the other farmers that were working down in LAFCO were aware of that as well. We were expecting immediate relief. But in addition to which, when I go back and examine some of these costs and line items, I see that internally, even though the goal of the detachment was to help save agriculture and provide benefits to the district, internally, your rates are higher than other districts, and you have a disproportionate, non-proportional rate charge between residential and agricultural uses. So my time is running up, and I'm going to make a suggestion for you. I was not aware, and 218 requires you to give legal notice, but I don't like to go that way, okay? Of an increase that I was going to get by going and being detached and getting out of PSAR. And actually now I have now had a double burden, because not only were my rates lower and so forth than the normal ag rates, because in PSAR, you have to be willing to accept in an emergency, reducing your water use and the like. So I'm going to suggest in the interim, while Jake and others are working on the long-term solution, that this district adopt a PSAR program. There's no reason why you can't do that. If PSAR has existed and hasn't faced a 218 challenge and the like, and put your ag users that were in PSAR, and if you so are willing to extend that offer to other ag users and the like, so you can create a program that should be bulletproof from 218. Thank you.
Thank you, Dwayne. Any comments?
Nope, taking some notes.
I have a comment, and Dwayne, I appreciate your perseverance and the fact that you continue to come to our committee and be a voice for agriculture, which is a vitally important part of the work of our district. And I really do. And my comment, which does not necessarily need a response, it's just a comment, is that if we were to reduce certain costs for ag users, what would be, and maybe you can think about this for the future, what vehicle would the district use to capture that lost revenue somewhere else in order for us to have a balanced budget? And so maybe at a future date, we can have that conversation.
About a 15-20-second response.
Because clearly that money is not free money. I mean,
What I would like to, well, first of all, you will see ag with lower rates buy more water. Okay, plain and simple. I've cut myself back to the bare bones. I'm the irrigator because I can't afford to put more water on. If my water is more reasonable, I'm going to water more. I'm going to buy more. And top of that, we talk about crop swap. I don't know how many acres in that, 50 acres, 100 or whatever. There's 1,000 acres out there that are uncultivated or been taken out of production that should be back in production, that has infrastructure in place with irrigation systems on slopes that homes can't be built on. Let's bring them back into production as well.
Thank you. Thank you for your thoughts. Okay, we're gonna go to wastewater now.
You thought you heard the bad news already.
Next is our Fund O2 wastewater. Slide 18.
There you go.
Thank you. Mhm.
Ouch.
And this is something I wanted to review separate of water fund because it's a separate set of revenue, separate set of charges to our customers. So this is something that we need to,
Well, and
Annually-
the nature of the business is
annually review.
significantly different. So, yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
it's a second budget.
Yeah.
And I believe it's something that's been overlooked for many years before, and rates were not increased for wastewater to ratepayers, and that is why we have to do a catch up and look at it in more detail. Going to our first slide, this is how much City of Oceanside is charging us for water treatment. I did my calculation and saw that actually it's increasing by about 20% each year. How much are they charging? Because they're playing catch up as well. They also were not increasing it for some time. We have to pay them the catch up late fee that we'll review on the next slide. And we also received email from them with this is the number that was that they said they're going to charge us. And that is something that we are currently reviewing with them. They said that the next year will be 2.1 million. And that is something that right now we will try to see where the number is
It's an
coming from.
80% increase over 3 years.
That's
That's
we really, I mean, the last couple of years, and we met with them several times once we were kind of reconciling everything from the previous few years, where they hadn't billed us, and those things were going on, and so it wasn't unexpected, in that first year, or even just last year. But this one we didn't really expect. And there's just been a kind of an exchange of emails as we were putting the budget together. Hey, do you guys have these numbers put together yet? There seems to be some confusion on their end too, as far as that what's included in that 2.15 million number. So we're kind of doing two things. We're verifying that, hey, give us all the backup, right? We need all the backup for this, which we do every year anyways. We review line item by line item where their costs are, where they're going. So we're still kind of reviewing this, but this was the initial number they gave us, and so for now we've got this included. I hope this changes in the next couple of weeks as we dig into this budget, because it's really just supposed to be O&M. So you're talking about, it's labor, it's chemicals, it's energy, and those kind of things. But 26%,
26%?
it seems off. And so I don't know. Maybe they've got some other things thrown in there that aren't, either inappropriate or they've lumped a couple of cost categories, and we're not sure yet. But this is the initial number they gave us. This is what we put in here. We're working through this though.
Could I ask a question? 5 years ago, when we were, looking at this and the agreement, I recall that basically this is an unending contract for starters.
Unless somebody terminates it, yes.
Yeah, but also there's no provision in the agreement for rates or increases in the future. Are you seeing that in the contract now? Because at that time, it was just open-ended. They could basically charge us what they wanted.
Well, I mean, it's all defined.
Okay.
It is all defined within the percentage of costs that we're covering for their, plant operations and, exactly what those costs are, right? So they go through that every single year, but you're correct. Those are just, and the way it works is we get a budget from them. So this is based on their, fiscal year 26, 20 or 25, 26 budget. And then once that year ends, they actually reconcile to actual cost. So it is all defined in there, but if their labor costs go way up, if those burdens do come to us at the percentage we're in, which is what 10 or 11% is what the part of their primary and secondary treatment facilities that we're a part of.
Are we the same percentage of the total amount of gallons that they're processing?
Yes, of their capacity, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
And
We pay for
we're paying for the capacity, not the number of gallons we're sending them.
Well, it depends on which cost. There's a couple
Okay.
different cost buckets in there. Some of them are just capacity based. We own 1.5 MGD of the plant, and but there are based on how much we're sending. Then there's some other things that so there's a couple different buckets. But
All right.
yeah,
Thank you.
And
That makes more sense.
these numbers just seem so dramatic. I mean, 20%, 20%, 26%. It's huge. And is that facility audited? Is there a audit that shows that their operating costs have gone up that much?
they do audit the financials at the end of the year. That's how
Yes.
we do the reconciliation. Yeah. So
And their financials verify that their
So,
operating
yeah.
costs are going up 2020 and 20.
well, last year I think we got a little bit of a refund. So the 1.7 number I think actually probably came down a little bit. We pay that in a monthly charge, right, for the 12 months. Then when they reconcile, they'll basically take it off the first month's bill, or whatever if it's over. I think they were a little bit over
Mhm.
last year, but yes, all correct.
Something just feels off
Yeah.
here. That's it.
Well, I think they, in their defense, to some degree, I think they missed it for, they weren't billing us. And so I don't think anybody was keeping track. Right. And so they had to go back in time and then now catch up to what the current rates should be. They weren't notifying us year after year after year, but,
So those numbers include catch up?
well, no, we're paying the catch up as a separate
No.
charge. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thought.
So, yeah, but we're going to push on this one.
I don't blame
Yeah.
you because I
we're
mean,
gonna push
whatever it's just impossible to understand how over a 3-year period.
Yeah.
The increases could be that dramatic.
Yeah.
And Constantine, you're
I'll give them a call.
you're a numbers guy. Look at their audits. I mean, let's
Mhm.
find out, did the cost of operating their facility go up 20 and 26%? It's hard to believe.
Unless they think our flow is increasing, our capacity is increasing, then that would be justified. But I don't know. I have to look at how do they come up with that percentage billing.
Which that could be some of it because our flow did increase over the last couple of years. Our wastewater flow did increase, so that could be
If
part
they
of it too.
billed us incorrectly, I'm not sure that we carry that liability, do we?
No, it would be just like when they didn't bill us;
No.
they would owe us it back. Yeah,
Yeah,
They
they would issue us a refund. I worked at Orange County Wastewater Authority for the last 7 years, and we do use audit at the end of each year, and basically it comparing usage to what was the budgeted. They will start invoicing you on a monthly basis based on their budget, and then they will do a true up at the end of the year. So. And I did see in one of our billings on July, so they were billing us 120,000 each month, and then in July it was 30,000. So they do reduce it all in 1 month once they do their own use audit, and it's usually based on the usage, on how much flow are we sending to them. So, and I'll be reaching out to them. I know their business, and so I will see where the charges are coming from. And we exchange some emails. And I think their staff is confused with because another person was saying, what, 26%? We thought it was just 4%. So, but then another person gave us 2.1 million number. And I'm like, no, that's just math doesn't add up. So I will ask them for a breakdown.
Because all 3 of those years look just horrendous.
Yeah, and those are actuals straight from our billing system. I pull all the invoices and put them together, and then you can see this is what we're actually paying per year on a monthly basis.
Can we
Shows- shows-
independently determine what our input to their facility has been over a year-to-year basis?
You mean the flow, like the
Yeah.
flow input? We have all that. We meter, yeah. We have all that, which has gone up, Actually, I think
I know it's gone up.
Yeah,
Has it gone up 20% a year?
yeah.
Well,
We'd have
yeah.
to look.
It's doubled. Is that bottom number the amount of flow?
That's the dollars.
That's
Dollars.
dollars.
That's just
doubled.
dollars. So
Dollars, yeah.
I don't know the flow. I will check with
dollars
them.
have doubled.
Well, it's compounded
Close.
because you got a 20.5% increase on top of a 19% increase
Yeah.
and a 26% increase on top of a 21%. So it's just,
It adds
it's
up.
But that's almost double from fiscal year 23 it was
Yeah.
1.1 million. Now it's 2.1. So we'll have to check with them. And that is why on monthly financials, you keep seeing negative revenue. That revenue is like just negative. And I decided to look into it, what's actually going on. And that's the high bills that we're paying. And
it's a lot of
this is
dough.
the rate that we are not charging our customers.
Now, is this just direct operating costs? It has nothing to do with what
Just
their
O&M,
cost for
CIP.
building the plant, and
No,
are they trying to amortize that?
There is a
on our
capital
portion?
There's a capital component too. Yeah.
So-
So are they increasing the plant? Yeah, are they improving the plant and increasing?
We would only cover like rehabilitation projects and things like that. So anything to basically keep the capacity. If there's a provision in the contract, if they expand capacity, we actually have a right to purchase it if we want, or we can not be a part of it.
So we're not paying for any of the groundwater recharge and that kind of stuff that they're doing over there.
No, not based on the last couple of years. No,
Okay. It's
Uh,
complicated.
On the
it's supposed to just primary and secondary treatment. Yeah.
On the next slide, I reviewed their catch-up billing for the last 3 fiscal years that they didn't charge us. I guess there was an agreement that we'll pay them in 17 equal payments, and the total was 3,556,861. That was split in the 17 payments. And as you can see, they charge us separately for CIP on March 2024, last year, 540,000. And that was their catch-up billing for the last 3 years for CIP. We pay them one lump sum. And this is straight from our billing system. This is actuals. So the total CIP and O&M catch-up bill was 4,097,000. We almost at the end of paying this off. As you can see, we have 3 last payments left of 209,000. So we are in April right now. So we'll be done with the catch-up. But this revenue needs to come from somewhere, and this is something we didn't anticipate before and didn't
Is
increase
this,
our rates.
is this chart telling me that oh my eyes, March 1st,
Mhm.
we not only are paying 209,227, did we also pay 540,560?
That was
Mhm.
for the CIP that
Yeah.
we're not
Mhm.
charged, back charged. Yeah. That was back in 24 when we reconciled all this.
Man. We are the goose that laid the golden egg for them. Oof.
Then we have some debt that we're paying. We borrowed for
Thoroughbred.
Thoroughbred lift station as about 700,000. Then our O&M expenditures, we're planning are about to be the same next budget year, 1.5 million. That's how much we're gonna need for our own O&M. And this is not counting the CIP. And the increase is because of order control for Horse Creek, and this will go up. This is a new charge that will have 200,000.
That's a budget number. That's the system wide odor control.
So that's how much we will be budgeting for our fund to wastewater. So 1.5 million.
So when you take that out of next year, basically O and M is net down. Is that right? Because
About
1.5
level.
minus
Yeah.
200 is 1.3.
Yeah, well, we had about 50 some odd, 55,000 in for odor control for this year. So, because we just did a, part of the year.
That's
Um,
good. So I mean, we're under very good cost control
Yeah.
here. Very good.
We are.
Dioxins.
Yes, yeah. I forget what's the name of the product, Robert? Voqua, yeah. But it's epoxy.
Real familiar with that.
Yeah. The only issue is with how much Oceanside is charging us.
That's-
So,
yeah.
and this is next slide reviewing our revenues. It is proposed to increase by 13% on July 1st. And that is a catch-up increase because for several years there was no increase on the wastewater side. And that's per EDU. And from 75.23, it will go up to $85.01. And that is continuing the plan of increasing by 13%. Even though we increasing, I think 13% was the maximum on the Prop 218. And with this increase, we will be a little bit negative still on the net revenue. And that's because of how much the catch-up billing promotion side and how much we're gonna have to, if they really will increase by 26%. So they will keep us underwater on the fund number 2. So here we're reviewing revenue to expenses, and that's where the negative amount comes in. We did include some CIP, and it will be offset by the grant revenue that we'll be receiving. And if we won't, for some reason, will not receive that grant revenue, then we'll probably not gonna do the CIP, so that we don't overspend too much on the wastewater fund, that we cannot afford to do that. Because in governmental accounting, one fund should not dip into another fund for the financing for the money. So if you have negative on wastewater, then it will have to dip into the water fund. It will fall, and then this is something we want to avoid.
So is it safe to assume that for the wastewater program, we have no reserves?
It's probably negative right now because of all the catch-up billing that we did
It was definitely approaching,
because of this.
yeah,
Because of that?
yeah, it was definitely and that was kind of part of that when we looked at that 5-year projection. By the time we got done with that, it was basically gonna get down to near zero, and then have to recover over, we put it over like a 5-year period to basically,
That's why we had to borrow too on the wastewater. Hoping for smooth recovery with the 13% gradual increases, and talking to Oceanside and see what they're charging us. And we will have more, if we'll have more construction in this area, more EDUs, then we'll have more revenue. So this is something we also.
The one thing we'll have to keep in mind is, the 218 did allow for pass through. So, and that it was directly at the city of Oceanside. So if there is, basically, if we run into this negative revenue position, we may have to consider at some point during the fiscal year doing a pass through on the Oceanside cost. Depending on how that kind of shakes out, we'll kind of hold that in our back pocket there, so we don't get ourselves into a worse position there.
What happens when we get past 1.5 million of 1.5 MGD?
Well, when you get to 1.45, you have to do something. You either purchase more capacity, which Oceanside has indicated they'd be open to, and or you have to stop putting connections, no more new connections. Right now we're at about, I think we're close to about 1. We're about 1 MGD, so we've got some room on the capacity there. Another, well, almost 500,000 gallons. We might be a little above 1, but at least 400,000 gallons a day or something. That's an average. So
How many residences does that translate into?
6,000? No.
it's a couple hundred gallons per EDU. I think we say it's 180, 180, 200, right in that range.
5,800 ratepayers or something on the wastewater. I saw
Yeah.
that number.
58.99
Yeah.
EDUs, it said.
So it depends on what you're building and those kind of things, but you figure it's 400,000 gallons per day. Yeah, a couple thousand, a couple thousand units.
Okay.
Yeah. But you have to get it there too. So that there's other issues in the
Right.
system we'd have to
I
deal with.
understand. I
So the
understand.
capacity is not a biggest concern at the moment, but
Robert sent me the slide for the wastewater flows. Ahmed's gonna pull up. It is increasing gradually. That's. And then, it's not increasing by 26%.
I can't
Oh,
read.
okay.
I can't read the chart. I'm on the 5-year unrestricted cash position chart.
This is a new chart.
This,
that Robert just said
Right.
what our
Yeah,
capacity.
that
flow
Oh,
Robert just sent me.
I have a question about this chart.
We're not there yet.
Yeah, we are. 5-year on.
No, we're inserting this chart. Glenn.
Okay.
These are our wastewater flow rates year by year.
It's gradually increasing, but not by a lot.
Yeah.
Unless they're doing catch.
10%.
yeah, the 36.
9%.
This chart is averaging monthly flows by year. So 2025 would include, I assume, like January, February, March, which actually are typically our higher flow months because of some wet weather. It's pretty dry this year, so I think some of that is probably growth. But you might have a little bit of wet weather in there, so that could trend down over the course of the year. But you can see from 2021 to 2024, we've had pretty steady increase, and that's all the homes going into Horse Creek and Citro and the Havens and the like. So
How are we on infiltration?
well, we get some wet weather events, and Robert can probably speak a lot more intelligently than me to this, some of the specifics, but usually once the ground gets very saturated and then we get rains, or if we get really heavy rains, we do see some some decent inflow and infiltration. Obviously when it dries out, that goes away and you get more just your dry weather flows. But
22, 23, we got quite a bit, but we don't,
Yeah.
in a normal year, it's not as much.
yeah, so some of that, but yeah, so there's probably some weather anomalies in there, but definitely you're seeing actual wastewater growth from, you're connecting homes. So there is definitely growth there.
Can go back to review the
Thank you.
cash projection.
Thank you.
Now we're back to the chart you can't read.
I figured out a way to read.
But 36, so if we're averaging 36, so we're a little over 1 million a day right now, as at least for the first 3 months of the year, a little over 1 million gallons a day.
So right now we're about at February here. Already surpassed our minimum requirement on the target reserve level. For minimum reserve level, and then I project a gradual increase of the reserves throughout the next fiscal year, 26. We'll be able to recover with a 4% rate increase and finally not paying high fixed fees for the San Diego County water. And then we'll see that we'll have some additional like a bond issuance or something that we're gonna need to do.
Those are actually the
on the
orange,
2028.
orange bars down.
This is the borrowing.
Yeah.
Where we're gonna need additional funds in order to support the CIP.
The little
plan.
peak in January 27 is some of our debt has been paid off and the debt payments fall off. And the big peak a year later is more debt
An
payments
issuance.
falling off.
That's an issuance.
It's an issuance.
That's a proposed issuance. So that coincides with our CIP. to where you would, and that's why you see the large spike, right? You issue the debt, but then you can see over the next, year, 18 months, you're spending that down.
So that's about 21, 22 million of new debt that was projected in 2028.
So some of that debt falls off. We have a host of CIP projects. That's actually where you see that, kind of spike above. That's your actually target. So you go above the target for a short time, but that's just because you've borrowed and now you're spending on CIP to bring it back.
And when some of our short-term debt gets paid off and it falls off the balance sheet, does that improve or is there no measurable effect on our bonding capacity? Does our short-term debt have any effect on our bonding capacity?
Well, it would. I mean, you got to keep your debt coverage, at a, certain rate to get a nice rate on your bonds. You want to be 2.5 would ideally. You can be a little bit lower than that, but sometimes that'll cost you. But yeah, so that helps. So when you reduce your debt payments by $1 million, which I think that's about what it showed, $1 million or a little over $1 million, then that your debt service coverage obviously improves. So yeah, it would help. Yep.
Can you use the bonds to refinance some of the debt? Is that
You
what
could.
you're talking
Yeah.
about?
Yeah, you
That's
could.
what I'm hoping. That's
Yeah.
what I'm hoping they would do.
Yeah, you could, and a lot of our debt has those kind of windows in there to where that could be a possibility if interest rates are very favorable and that kind of thing. You can kind of package it together, get some savings by refinancing some of those. So
We should
he'll be looking at that.
We should be on a lower risk in order to get good rate from the bond, and that is going to be better once at least in the next 3 years, when the highest you see the highest bars will start falling off of the debt, and that will bring us to where we want to be at the less risky borrower. So then we'll able to borrow at lower interest rates. And our debt to income ratio, we'll have to look at that.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Right, and if no other questions on this slide, this pretty much concludes our PowerPoint review, and next steps will be May 6th joint budget workshop with more in detail. We'll provide you by line item details on each departmental expense. Everything will be provided, and you can review and prepare your questions. And then on May 27th will be our planned budget approval.
Does May 6th give you a reasonable amount of time to sort the Oceanside situation, or is that going to take longer?
I hope so. It depends on them, how responsive they are.
Right.
We heard that they had some turnover in the finance as well. They have some new people, so that might cause some issues.
Well, if their turnover in finance has been beneficial to them as ours has been to us, the way you came up to speed overnight, maybe there's hope. Maybe there's hope.
I have one more question.
Yes, sir.
This goes back to one of your first charts that I've been mulling over, the water sales.
Hmm.
And when it shows the water sales projected for 25 and then for 26 budget, it's showing that the water sales for residential are dropping 14%, whereas the water sales for ag are dropping only 6.5%. I'm a little confused. How did you work out those numbers?
This is budgeted numbers, and based on the conservative side, because we are planning that overall sales for the year will be 11,000 only. And if you're comparing it to the current projected year where you have sales of 12,091. So we think that our sales will drop by 10% in total. And that's how you see it affects the residential going down and agricultural is going down as well. And this is just to be on the conservative side of budgeting.
Yeah, I would expect. I mean, residential is typically pretty steady. They react to some weather too, but we actually probably should see a little bit of growth there. But it's very small incremental growth. So that's probably a pretty conservative number. Yeah.
Well, I was just worried about the reduction in ag maybe not being enough when our farmers are telling us that they're having to use less and less water, whether anything was considered in that regard in coming up with these numbers.
Yeah, I think when you look over the years, I mean, we took a look back about 6 or 7 years to kind of get a good feel for where we're at. As you can see, you know, I mean, we did drop below, it was below 6,000 the year it was very wet. That could potentially happen again. You know, we could have a very wet year. I think when we're budgeting for those things, what we're really trying to do is strike a balance of where we,
Yeah.
in a generally normal year where we think we're going to be. Obviously, we're never going to be right, but I think we're as close as we can, you know, assume we're going to be for this coming year. You know, especially what we've seen, you know, over the last 4 or 5. You know, we've seen some wet weather, we've seen some dry weather, so I think we have a decent understanding of kind of where we sit at least today. Obviously, we're going to keep a close eye on it, though. Yeah.
With this budget, we hope our farmer usage will be similar on average, that they're not going to go on strike and don't use any water. So that is kind of where the budget is coming from, to be projecting an average normal usage.
Yeah.
We'll try to keep our farmers and residential customers happy and hear their concerns. And we're doing a rate study. We'll review the rates and review the PSR program.
Thank you.
Is that's
That concludes my
Okay.
presentation.
all right? Thank you. Do the committee members have any further questions or comments for Jake and Constantine on the budget preparation? Otherwise, we'll move to the next item on the agenda. We good? Thank you very much. That was very comprehensive. I'm not sure I liked all the news in it, but some of it was good and some of it was problematic, but we'll get there. Item 11, review of the monthly finance packet.
Yeah, I touched on the review at the beginning, the budget review. So basically, there's some good news as of February, and we are where we need to be. Our budget to actuals as where I would expect them. And we have great water sales, almost at 10,000, and it was budgeted 10,000 for the whole year. And then from February to June 30th, we still have ways to go. So we'll be way extra on our revenues, will be extra on our expenses, but the net we will be able to save some and put in our reserves. So if there's any additional questions, and
Yeah, I'd just say on that too. I mean, that's really important because where we're actually getting to is, you know, where we start to hit those minimum targets, and when we rise, you know, somewhere above that, you have kind of two things. One being you have some rate stabilization funds. That's the very next, the very next bucket that those things go into. And, you know, without that, I think we're, really subject to not being very smooth with our rates, right? Met comes back with something. We have a bad year of main breaks and things like that. So just that little bit, in having that available, I think it gives, really all of our customers, and I think our agricultural customers in particular, some kind of comfort knowing that, there's not a shock coming. Right. And so that's, I don't know, from my perspective, where we were was very uncomfortable, and we're just starting to get to a point where now we can kind of employ some of those things. I'll even, kind of speak back to, last year we had, Met had a program where you could pre-purchase water, right, at today's rate and have it for deliveries in a future year. They had some control over that when they send it to you and things like that. But obviously that locks in a water cost and we just didn't have the reserves to take advantage of it. And so, I think kind of on both of those fronts, right, having some real stability in our rates because we have some rate stabilization funds and, you know, and the ability to use those when something odd happens, you know, if it's a wet year, water purchases go down, you know, we're not having to go, hey, we need 9, 10, 12%, 15% rate increases. We can, you know, you can smooth those things out. But then also being able to take advantage of some opportunities that might come our way. And then obviously funding our CIP, which we've included in there. So there's some good stuff. Yeah, a little work to do on the wastewater side and but the water side looks pretty stable.
Pete, Hayden, anything else? Bill?
Just noticed this, one chart of major cost drivers for FY 26 and it isn't easy. I mean, we're absorbing a ton of increased costs.
Yes.
Have to budget this year. The 9.5% increase in the treated purchases you already mentioned from Metropolitan Water District. 11.5% increase in fixed capacity charge. 20% increase in CalPERS UAL. Does that mean the amount that we have to contribute per employee because of market performance?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the market takes a big hit. Then we have to make it up.
Yeah.
Is that basically what I'm hearing?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
That's how it works.
That's how. Okay.
With CalPERS, they, yeah.
They screwed up, so we pay.
Yeah. 5.6% increase in labor costs, driven mostly by a 7% rise in health insurance.
Which actually for the health industry it's been worse. It's actually been worse. So, yeah, but still increases there. Yeah.
51,000 increase in electrical costs. That's coming along too. So, I mean, it's worth commenting that this is a ton of additional costs that are getting built into our operating expenses. Pretty significant.
Yes. And the reason that we can able to pass way less increase, just 4%, is because of how much we were overpaying with San Diego and how much of a better deal we get. Still, we get better deal compared to San Diego from Eastern.
Yeah.
And that's why we're not passing along 10, 16%. We're able to absorb some from our previous rates, and it's just the 4%.
And
Yeah.
a good year in water sales.
Yeah, and I think, you know, in addition to that, I mean, we've had some on the operation side, just being able to control costs. I mean, I'll just use one example is our chemical costs up at Morrow. You know, our operations group made an improvement there, and it has dramatically impacted how much chemical we're using. So, so those things, you know, we renegotiated our tank deal. You know, those things that we're doing. You know, we did the lease agreement with Peralt, and so anywhere where we can get other sources of income and reduce expenses, I think a lot of those things have really been built into this budget too. And they, you know, for a district like ours, our size, it shows up. I mean, it shows up when we you know, we have a win like that. It really helps us kind of control these things. So we've been trying.
When we say there's going to be a 4% rate increase, that's what was talked about in here. Is the rate study going to tell us, or is it across the board? Is it 4% on the fixed? Is it 4% on the consumption? And is it the same for
Yeah, so that's what
residential and ag? And I mean,
we're gonna be looking at those things, I think, before, you know, leading into January 1, because obviously we're not proposing anything until January 1.
Rate study?
Yeah, I think what we wanted to get to a point was just what Constantine showed you today. We know what our outlays are going to be. We know what our, you know, we're budgeting what our revenue is,
4% more money.
and the balance of that, yeah, TBD a little bit.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. All right. Okay, I think we're at item 12, suggested agenda items for next time. I think that's pretty obvious. Our next meeting is a joint meeting with engineering and the board and us. And so I think, and it's all about the budget. So I think we're pretty clear on what that is.
We'll have
And
pretty
that
much
gets-
one item.
Huh?
Pretty much one item.
Pretty much one item, and it should take some time, I'm
Yeah.
guessing. Yeah. And item 13, adjournment. Unless anybody has something of pressing importance to raise here, I'm gonna say let's adjourn this meeting. QED, let's quit and eat dinner, okay?
I have a question. Do you want the same presentation on the May 6th, or you want to add something? Do you want to go over with engineering and the board, everybody, the same slides or any additions, comments?
I think this
Up
was
to
a
the
very
board.
comprehensive
They're gonna run that. show.
presentation. To the extent that we can provide some finer detail around
It'll be fine
cuckoo
at that.
things like the ocean side and a few other things that we identified as we went through. Maybe you guys would be willing to take a second look at bond financing
Hmm.
sooner rather than later, because the sooner that we can take those high bars and refinance into bonds, roll into bonds and make those bars lower, that dramatically improves our financial condition.
Hmm.
So, things like that. But I think you've covered all the bases. I mean, you've covered water and wastewater. You've covered operating. We talked about CIP previously and you're talking about revenues and expenses. That's what a budget is.
Yep.
So
That's
I
right.
think I think your structure is good. So
Thank you.
go for it.
Thank you. Mhm.
If you go to today's meeting, the presentation, everything's available online. Yep,
In fact, it's there now.
it is.
Yep, because I looked at it before I came and got my paper, so it's there now. All right, well, I want to thank the public. Carol, Dwayne, thank you for coming. Thank you for participating, joining our discussion. We appreciate your input, even though sometimes the outcomes may not be exactly as you prefer. Rick, thank you. And that's it. We're done.
Thank you.